Welcome to the Hoosier Basketball Experience. I'm your host, Phil Eisenbarger, and we're so fortunate this week to again have my good friend and teammate Chuck Franz with us. Later in the show, you're going to hear about myself and Chuck running the white team, which was the second team against an NCAA championship in 1981. We're also going to hear Chuck tell us about the wonderful establishment at French Lick, which he completely runs. We'll be back with Chuck Franz after these messages.
The Hoosier Basketball Trivia Question, sponsored by Christy, Farrow, Lee, and Bell. Serious injury isn't what we do, it's all we do. Today's question: who was the first high school player to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated? The answer after the break. Now our trivia question answered, sponsored by Christy, Farrow, Lee, and Bell. Serious injury isn't what we do, it's all we do. Today's question: who was the first high school player to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated? The answer, Rick Mount.
Welcome back to the Hoosier Basketball Experience. I'm here with Chuck Franz. Chuck, I want to talk to you about your experience on the Indiana All-Star team. Talk about the experience, your teammates, the games against Kentucky.
Well, I got to play again with Mr. Basketball, Steve Bushy, Eric Williams, Dave Barnett, Chucky Barnett, Lynn Mitchum, and Kentucky had a very talented team that year. Dirk Minifield, and Charles Hurt and Melvin Turpin. So they swept us. That's not a real good memory. They ended up beating us twice, but Kentucky had a good team that year.
What were the venues that year?
That year, Freedom Hall and I believe it was Market Square.
So they kept it at the big spots. Talk about what it meant reading for the first time, probably in either a Louisville or Indianapolis Star paper, that you had made the Indiana All-Stars. Or did you get a call?
I think I just read it.
Yeah.
It'd been a dream of mine, just like any other kid playing basketball in Indiana. I can tell you, my uncle took me to my first, foray into understanding Indiana All-Stars was Steve Downing and George McGinnis on the 1969 team. He took me to a practice. I never thought that I would accomplish that, but having the year I did and reading about it was great.
So we talked last week with you about your high school experience. We're going to move over to IU now. You arrive at IU for the 79-80 season. IU obviously had the undefeated team in 1976. In 1979, our Hoosiers win the NIT. You come on campus as a freshman. What were your first impressions?
It was kind of surreal for me to, be out there on that court, be in that locker room, to wear that jersey. And if you remember, Phil, at the start of that year, there was a #1 jersey on Sports Illustrated that year.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever role I could fill, I was in dreamland at that point.
You and I hit it off immediately. So we sort of had the 4 Musketeers instead of the 3. You and I and Ted and Randy Whitman just had a great time. Often after practice at the Pizza Hut playing asteroids, which is how sophisticated we were at the time. But what great memories. So in that 79-80 season, you and I both got to experience a Big Ten championship. as a freshman, and that's one year where I actually got to play quite a bit because Woody was hurt and then came back for those 6 games that led us to the championship. But what are your best memories about that 79-80 season as a freshman at IU?
Well, the first one was, you're on the court with Mike Woodson. You're on the court with Randy Whitman, and I got to guard Isaiah Thomas every day.
Yeah.
That made me grow up real quick and understand, just what it was going to take to, play at Indiana University and represent the university. But I'll never forget, as you mentioned there, Phil, Christmas time, we go over to Coach Knight's house and Woody's downstairs and he's just had his back surgery, and all of us, we knew what an important part of that team he was. And then those practices when he was down on the other end of the court and just shooting, and you're wondering if he's ever going to come back. And I don't know if you remember that day when Coach finally yelled to Woody saying, "Get in here," because one of us had screwed up in some way.
Yeah. And
there wasn't one of us that was going to touch him, coming off of that surgery.
And then he leads us, 6 games straight. And I think he's the Big Ten Player of the Year and only played, 2/3 of the season. A great experience. So we follow that up. We are a sophomore. We get off to incredibly slow start. We have the debacle in Hawaii where we get beat and come home. And we won't talk about those practices on air right now because they're not fit for television, at least this television station. But talk a little bit. I really feel like you and I and a number of our other teammates were instrumental in helping that team that year. And it started in Bob Young's, the trainer's office, getting ready with the white team. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, just like any year, again, you brought up, we all had our shots early in the year to, commandeer playing time. That's just the way Coach Knight was. And again, a rough start. We come back from Hawaii. The roles start to be set, let's say. And we start to get on a little bit of a run as a team. And, yourself, me, Tony Brown, Steve Bushy, Glenn Grunwald, we knew our playing time was practice. And we'd get taped up for those practices. And, like you say, whether it would be with Bob Young or not. But the starters, did they really want to practice? Well, no, we're gonna kick your butt out here, whether whether you like it or not. And we took great pride in that, Phil. And we just played hard. That's all we did.
So, one of the stories that comes to mind is we're in the training room, and I had taken the white tape that was used to tape our ankles up, and underneath, we knew we probably weren't going to change to red shirts because the white team was the second team, and we wrote Hanover underneath our jerseys where Coach Knight couldn't see it. And the reason is he was wont to say, we play Kentucky and Notre Dame and Purdue. Hanover's not on the schedule, which is not to put Hanover down at all. It was just Coach Knight's way of doing it. But it reminds me of your kids. You have some incredibly talented kids. One of them was a great basketball player at Bloomington South and then Hanover, and now is an assistant coach at Bloomington South. Where are the 2 boys now?
The 2 boys, actually, the oldest son is just took a job with Vail Resorts in Colorado. And Keenan was the football player, made All-State, and he played at Stevenson University out by Baltimore and is now in California and roofing solar sales.
Got it. So you end up playing 3 more years because you took a redshirt year as well. So you played in 81, 82. In 82, 83, you took a redshirt year because Coach Knight needed you to come back and run that team the next year. Is that right?
Well, there were 6 seniors. That was one thing. I changed my major as well late in my college career. So I changed my major from business to computer science that same year. And so it really worked out. He could have a senior to, I like to say, get on. And, it actually benefited me scholastically as well to take the extra year.
Sure. So when we come back, we'll talk about Chuck's redshirt year when IU wins the Big Ten, which turned out to be one of Coach Knight's favorite Big Ten championships, if not championships overall. And we're also going to talk to Chuck about his experience in French Lick, Indiana, after these messages. Welcome back to the Hoosier basketball experience, today with Chuck Franz. Hey Chuck, in 1982-83, you took your redshirt year, which meant you practiced just like you were on the team the whole year, so it wasn't any different from that standpoint. And then IU somehow comes out with a Big Ten championship that year, which I know Coach Knight holds special. Can you tell the folks why that was?
Well, much like with Woody, I can't remember what point in the season. I think there were 6 games left. Much like Woody, maybe 5. We're at Michigan and we're walking off the court. Like say, I'm there, I'm not dressed, but I'm walking off the court, and we had lost that game. And Ted Kitchell says, "Hey, C," he says, I can't feel my left leg." And he basically, his career, he was done. He didn't have surgery right away, but he had something happen to his back and he wasn't going to be able to play. And so I remember coming down 3 games at home. And if, to be in contention, we had to win those 3 games at home. And Coach Knight basically said, we need everybody, meaning the fans, and everybody's got to come out, because we didn't have Ted, and Ted was just a big part of that team. We were going to have to change the way we played, but we were really going to need the fans. And, those last 3 games at home, we won them all. As you well know, that's a tough place to play, and you get the fan base riled up. And he said, yeah, we're going to hang a banner to this year.
And Ted's going to be on the show with us next week, and we'll talk to him about that. But I can remember him I can still see him running off to the corner of the court at Michigan, and he knew there was a problem. So the next year, you graduate all those seniors. Chuck Franz has got to play in so many of those games. Talk about that experience, finally getting all kinds of playing time.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out, just as Coach and I had talked about. We had a great freshman class: Steve Alford, Marty Simmons, Daryl Thomas, and Todd Meyer. They ended up winning the, national championship. I had some really good games in the first part of the year, mid part of the year. As you get towards the end of the year, Coach needed to move to the next year, being the only senior. And, so Stu Robinson started to play a little bit more, and I played a little bit of a backup role. But you couldn't ask for, as a kid from Indiana, getting that playing time and winning games, hitting a game-winning shot against Kansas State, things you'll never forget. And then ultimately, we beat Michael Jordan in his last game.
There you go. So let's move to graduation. You go to work for Cook, along with so many of our good IU teammates and former players. We lost Wayne Ratford, who was a senior captain when I was a freshman. What a great guy. But you had Scott Eels and Kamstra. Who am I missing?
Well, you got Scott May, who's in the apartment business with CFC as well.
Got it. So Chuck is with Cook for several years before Cook decides to get involved in the renovation of the French Lick Hotel and the West Baden Hotel. And I could talk about this for forever. As a member of the Indiana Historical Society, I'll tell you, see, when I was practicing law, every year the State Bar Association had their annual meeting at French Lick, and we would get a flyer that said, "Come to the renovated French Lick Hotel," which meant that they had swept the lobby or something because it was still falling apart. It is now, and so that anybody that's watching that has not been, it is an absolute treasure. Cook and Chuck brought these two facilities not just back to their original shape, but even better with the golf courses and everything else. But Chuck, talk about what your role is now, and maybe when you first got involved, having to oversee that entire project.
Yeah, it wasn't abnormal. A lot of Bill's investments around the world, I would go and troubleshoot. I would go and I would help out wherever his manufacturing facilities were. So once, the Cook family invested the money down in here to restore the facilities, and once it got open and started running in 2007, Bill said, you might get down there too and help out. In the beginning, we had a management company that was running the hotels. We didn't have a lot of experience in hotels, and after a year or two, we took over running, we let the management company go, and we started to run the hotels ourselves, as well as the casino and the golf courses. So, been here since, we opened up. Wonderful place to come every day. Like I say, you compare it to an office to coming here. Everybody's coming to the French Lick Resort to have a good time. All you got to do is make sure they have it.
How many folks come down and find you or one of the staff and say, "Hey, where's Larry Bird's house? Where's Larry Bird live?"
You'd be amazed that, we got 33 Brick Street right across the street from the French Lick Hotel, which has a lot of his memorabilia in it. I would still say it's not, let's say it's 50-50,
Sure.
That people would ask, but everybody knows where Larry Bird's from and they want to see that stuff.
Yeah, so often when we've had coaching changes at IU, the Cook group has been so wonderful to put together a reunion of all the players and managers and spouses, and we did it here for Woody at the West Baden Hotel, which before the Astrodome was built, was the largest dome facility in the entire world, and it's back to its original structure. It's just wonderful. You must have a great time just showing people around.
Yeah, I mean, and Phil, it still amazes me how many people that I'll see walking the halls, and you can tell they haven't been here because they're asking about things. They like, where's the casino? Where's the golf courses? So, we will attract 1 million people a year here.
Wow.
If you can believe that.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the attention to detail that Bill Cook required when you all brought that place back to life.
Well, it's not only Bill, but Gail. Gail went through the community and collected historic pictures of what the dome used to look like. She went into the community, into the households, and asked for pictures. They were that detailed to bring it back and restore it to exactly what it was. So it was both Bill and Gail over at the West Baden Dome to get it, historically correct, not only for landmarks, but for everybody that is going to come visit it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me even at the French Lick Hotel, so maybe some of the columns or the tile just wasn't right, had to be put back the way it was originally.
Correct. I mean, very, very meticulous. It didn't, money, Bill's was philanthropy at its best. He was going to make it historically accurate.
Well, Chuck, it's been so good to have you on the show. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Everything that you mentioned today makes up the Hoosier basketball experience, and that's why we wanted to have you on, and I can't thank you enough. For those that are watching right now, join us next week for another edition of the Hoosier basketball experience, and we'll be back after these messages. Thanks for joining us on the Hoosier basketball experience. You know, we've had the great opportunity to talk with all sorts of Indiana players, players that went to IU, players that went to Purdue, great high school players. We've also talked with sports writers and sportscasters, executive directors of the Hall of Fame. We're going to continue talking with these legends and hope that you'll join us on the Hoosier basketball experience. If you join us next week, you'll get to see and talk with my good friend, teammate, and champion, Ted Kitchell. This and so much more if you'll join us next week on the Hoosier Basketball Experience.